Saturn stations retrograde in the sign of the Fish on Saturday, June 17th, and until November 4th, we will get to examine our illusions and self-defeating tendencies, address some fears, and get a chance to build stronger emotional boundaries. Let's take a closer look at this transit and break it down for all 12 signs. My name is Anastasia. I'm a traditional Western astrologer specializing in natal, relationship, and predictive astrology. Thank you for stopping by. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe, leave me a like or a comment. It helps my channel grow and it helps my channel to be more discoverable by YouTube, which in exchange encourages me to bring more content your way. So it's deeply appreciated. If you'd like a reading, if you'd like to know what's ahead for you and perhaps understand this or any other transit better, you can book a reading with me at anastasiadoesastrology.com. There are also links down below. You can also become a member to receive monthly horoscopes, which is a special perk, and also get weekly guidance in terms of in a shape of emails from me. Before we dive in, we are talking in this video about Saturn, the Lord of Karma. And if you have any planets between 0 and 10 degrees, Pisces, Virgo, Sag, and Gemini, you are likely to be hit by Saturn a lot right now. So as a way of working with Saturn, I would highly recommend getting my Jupiter and Pisces candle or oil, or you can also get Saturn and Aquarius candle or oil. Jupiter has different quality. It's kind of yin and yang with Saturn. Saturn is duties and diligence and karma and realism. Jupiter offers optimism and hope and growth and faith, right? So when you are having a tough Saturn transit, or even if you're born with kind of complicated Jupiter in your chart, Jupiter in Capricorn, Virgo, or Gemini, you can really benefit from Jupiter and Pisces items. And I still have a few left. These are selling out pretty quick. And Saturn in Aquarius candle actually has strong Saturn moving direct, so this energy is more recommended for those trying to keep the progress going and keep getting stuff done. So Saturn goes retrograde between June 17th and November 4th, and it's going to be retrograding from 7 degrees Pisces until 0 degrees Pisces. So like I said, if you have any planets between 0 and 8, or even 0 and 10 degrees, Pisces, Virgo, Sagittarius, or Gemini, all mutable signs, you are likely to feel this retrograde the most because it's going to be exactly conjoining, opposing, or squaring your natal planets. And that's where I would recommend, kind of considering getting some alleviating Jupiter and Pisces energy. Why this retrograde is really interesting and important is because Neptune is about to station retrograde in Pisces on June 30th. So we're going to get the doubling up of the themes. So let's talk a little bit about the general significance of the retrograde and then do the usual break it down through all 12 signs. Saturn is the last visible planet. Saturn rules the boundary of the visible and the invisible. We have Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto after Saturn, but we cannot see them with the naked eye. So Saturn is the Lord of boundaries, and those boundaries can be good, where we're talking about the door to your house that protects you from people you don't want to see, people knocking on your door saying hello, but not friendly people. And Saturn rules boundaries that are less exciting to us, boundaries that delay us. If we are on the other side of the door and we're trying to get somewhere and we're unable to. Or death, or old age, or disease. Saturn is very stern and grounded and practical. Saturn is like the grandpa of the zodiac, right? But not like the super chill grandpa that will tell you war stories and will make sure you're staying alive and staying kind of aware. Saturn is currently in Pisces, which brings an interesting flavor to Saturn. Pisces is the sign that is a water sign. It's emotional, it's spiritual, it's artistic. So when Saturn is traveling through Pisces, we are called to take responsibility for our creative projects, but ideally projects that also serve the collective. We are called to take responsibility for our feelings and process any trauma, any emotions we haven't processed while Saturn was in Capricorn or Aquarius, two of the signs Saturn rules and is very serious at, right? Like in Pisces, we can actually sit down and cry the tears, but be structured about the way we're crying. So it's like, take responsibility for your feelings, take responsibility for your creative urges, look at your illusions and delusions, right? Pisces is sometimes connected to escaping. So on the negative, we can have a tendency to escape responsibilities and kind of run towards drinking or run towards video games, whatever lets us forget about all the duties we have. So it's an interesting placement, and please share in the comments below if you've been feeling maybe more emotional, maybe more kind of drawn to address the feelings, or even if you discovered a new religion or a new system of beliefs for yourself, which Saturn in Pisces can be very much about. So when Saturn is moving direct, the energy is more external. It's more visible, right? You're literally building a project. You're dedicating every day to this project bit by bit, or you are asking for a raise, you're getting a new position, or you're kind of dealing with visible difficulties. When Saturn is retrograde, we become a lot more interested in inner structures. We start to prioritize our mental well-being, and we start to dig deep and try to understand what's our motivation, what's the driving force behind the projects we're working on. And it could be the time of more internal changes. And a lot of times the external progress tends to slow down. So I like to compare Saturn to a construction site, especially Saturnian projects, because they're all long-term. They all deal with legacy, adulting, serious type of stuff. So it's you're working, and you're kind of being very direct with what you're doing. And then when Saturn goes retrograde, you discover flaws in the foundation, or some of the elements that you need do not come in, and you need to rethink how to address them. But it becomes a lot more about the reasons underneath it all, or the guiding principles underneath it all. And when the outer progress slows down, you definitely get more opportunities to examine your feelings when you're just sort of sitting with the feelings instead of go all the time. Because when planets are direct, we are carried away by their energies. A lot of times we're sort of, I'm a Libra rising, Saturn is in my house of daily work, so I'm just kind of feeling overwhelmed and taking on more things and working. But then when Saturn goes retrograde, it could be a period of taking it easy and building a better balance and asking myself, why am I working? Perhaps I'm escaping some feelings by putting things on my to-do list, or whatever it might be, right? It's I'm speaking more hypothetically, but it's definitely very much about examining your guiding principles, examining your motivation, and even addressing some fears that are holding you back, rethinking what's real, what's not real, right? Where are you being honest with yourself and actually working on tangible, achievable goals versus where are you wasting time? And maybe Saturn being retrograde is about releasing some projects that aren't worth your time. Could also be the time of processing pain and loss and difficulty, and exploring your emotions and looking at spiritual matters, or leaning into faith, leaning into astrology, leaning into esoteric, trusting your intuition more, all of the Piscean watery things. Even being more thoughtful with how you cry, right? With how you process emotions, and addressing that energy with more seriousness. Very much about building solid boundaries. Sometimes those boundaries could be with yourself. They could, of course, be with other people. People who drain you, people who perhaps ask for your time but do not reciprocate. Spiritual boundaries, psychic boundaries, boundaries with who you give energy to, or even how you spend your time. Because, like I said, Pisces can deal with self-defeating topics. So we can be self-defeating ourselves by not expressing our feelings, or we can do so by scrolling social media until 2 a.m. at night. So rethinking what you give your attention to, what you listen to, what you consume, who you talk to could be very important right now. And once again, if you're working on something, perhaps you're examining the environment around you in order to get to where you're going faster. I mentioned sorting through real and not real and kind of coming up with plans. Saturn goes retrograde right before, few hours before the new moon in Gemini, in a square to Neptune in Pisces. So there's a lot of feeling versus ideas, and emotions versus your plans, and one doesn't go without the other. You cannot achieve things if you are ignoring your feelings. And that could be the negative side of Saturn in Pisces, and Saturn retrograde in general is escaping. So be very mindful that you're not just running away from your feelings, because you cannot run away from Saturn. If you've been following astrology for a while, you probably know that Saturn will catch up with you, and he will teach the lessons that he is trying to teach you. So do not fear the retrograde. It's never about being afraid. It is about working hard and focusing on your growth and progress, and leaning onto community, leaning onto faith, and leaning into meditation or spiritual tools you have at your disposal. Take it one step at a time, one small step. We have a long retrograde, right? It's starting in June, lasting until November. So a very big chunk of the year. And of course, Saturn is an outer planet. Saturn is one of the planets that stays retrograde 4 to 5 months out of the year, every year. So it's less dramatic than Venus or Mars or Mercury retrograde, but of course it correlates this year, or coincides. I'm like, the word starts with a co, but which one? I don't know. It coincides with Venus retrograde and Neptune retrograde. So it is a bit of a slower time of the year, but working on our feelings is never a bad idea. So another final thing I'm going to mention is during this period, Saturn will oppose the Sun. When the planet is retrograde, it tends to be the closest to Earth, versus when it conjoins the Sun, it's on the other side of us, so closer to the Sun. And Saturn will be brighter in the sky. So there might be more tensions, more delays, but once again, it's very much inner topics. It's inner resistance, it's inner fears. What are you afraid of? Sometimes we are literally afraid of success. So needing to look within, needing to do some introspective work will be the theme of Saturn retrograding. But it's not all difficult, right? One transit worth mentioning is on June 19th. We have Saturn sextiling Jupiter, which is the first aspect Saturn and Jupiter make together since we had the grand conjunction. In late 2020, I believe it happened, when Saturn and Jupiter came together. So this is a harmonious interaction. They're sort of checking in with each other, and Saturn in Pisces wants to help the collective, wants to heal, and Jupiter in Taurus wants to build long-lasting foundations. So it's a nice balance between the future and the present. So let's take a look at all 12 signs and see what Saturn retrograding could be for you. If you are an Aries rising, Saturn is about to go retrograde in your 12th house. And so will Neptune. Neptune will start its retrograde on June 30th. Saturn goes retrograde on June 17th. And having Saturn retrograding in the 12th house could be a time of inner growth and analysis and understanding of the hidden things. 12th house is the dark house. It rules spiritual matters. It rules your passions and hobbies that perhaps you've been discovering. Right now, as Saturn is retrograding, you may experience a setback. Maybe your passions for the hidden and esoteric get delayed, where you have to prioritize something else. It is very much a house of self-defeating tendencies. Anywhere where we're sabotaging ourselves or escaping reality. So when Saturn is retrograding in your 12th house, you are called to stop running away from those topics. And they can be in your life where you're doing something self-defeating, or maybe there's somebody in your life that you are enabling in some regard. Maybe you are either you have a family member and you keep giving them money when you know that they will spend the money on alcohol, for example, or you have or it's your own, either it's you or it's a family member where you need to address those topics. And a lot of it can be, this period can be very much about prioritizing, slowing down and resting. And even I feel like as an Aries rising with Jupiter being in your first house until May, and North Node is going into your first house in July, there's a lot of action in your life. I even have clients I know that you guys have felt burned out or you've been struggling a lot. So Saturn retrograding in the 12th house could also be about asking yourself, why are you doing those things? Why are you working so hard? And is it truly worth your time? Is it truly making you happy? And let me know how you feel and how it resonates in the comments below. If you are a Taurus rising, Saturn is about to retrograde in your 11th house. And so will Neptune after June 30th. 11th house is the place of community and friendships. And when Saturn is going direct in the 11th house, you may be working really hard on connecting to some organization, maybe building new friendships, maybe building group projects. And then when Saturn goes retrograde, you start to become more introspective about people who come into your life, and potentially more selective, where you will be more honest with, first of all, the projects that you're pursuing, because that's 11th house as well, whether those projects feel important to you with all the changes that are happening in your life. And you will be more thoughtful about people. Are these people aligned? And if they're not, perhaps it's time for you to welcome people who are aligned. Any work that you've been doing, any kind of volunteering or social work or starting a podcast, expressing your goals in a visible way will potentially slow down, encouraging you to make changes and reconsider. But the biggest question here is, who are you trying to connect with? Who is aligned with you? And what kind of relationships would you like to have in your life? And sometimes you have to let go of the outdated connections in order to welcome some new ones. And let me know how Saturn in Pisces since March 7th has been affecting your friendships and, collective and relationships and hopes and dreams and all of that kind of stuff. For my lovely Gemini risings, Saturn will begin its retrograde on June 17th in your 10th house of career, status, reputation, and social standing. And Neptune will also begin its retrograde here on June 30th. So Saturn being direct, Saturn went into Pisces on March 7th, could have been very much about taking direct action. Starting a YouTube channel, looking for a new job, applying for a new position in a company, starting a business. As Saturn slows down, so can your forward momentum slow down. It's possible that you may experience more delays, more endings, even potentially when it comes to your career or public reputation. it looks like you will need to do a lot of internal work, I think, and ask what fears you have, what kind of negative tendencies you have that are preventing your professional growth. Because you are a Gemini rising, we're actually having a new moon in your first house, and it's squaring Neptune in the 10th. So it's almost like there is a fear, or like there is a difficulty, even potentially like having too many ideas or overextending yourself, spreading yourself in too many directions. Saturn going retrograde in the 10th house could be the time to focus on one thing at a time. And sometimes the progress can feel very slow, but it's not slow because you're doing a lot of inner work. And ask yourself, what is the thing that you're trying to accomplish, versus trying to accomplish a lot of things and not realizing why. And let me know how this resonates in the comments below. If you are a Cancer rising, Saturn is about to go retrograde in your 9th house, and so will Neptune, starting June 30th. And 9th house deals with your faith, your travel pursuits, your education pursuits, writing, and self-expression in terms of education or in terms of growth in life. When Saturn is moving direct, Saturn went into your 9th house on March 7th. When Saturn is moving direct, maybe you are taking action when it comes to traveling. Maybe you're taking action in terms of immigration. Maybe you are planning to go back to school, or maybe you're writing a dissertation, or some kind of expansion. You're doing something to grow your life, to explore the unknown. When Saturn stations retrograde, that progress slows down. A lot of times, 9th house retrogrades deal with your inner mental state and your inner orientation and your core beliefs. So a lot of times here you may be examining, why are you pursuing these things, right? Why are you studying, or why are you traveling so much, or even where you want to live, or where do you see yourself? Like, it could be the time to actually ask yourself really important questions in terms of where do you see yourself and what are your true goals, right? Instead of just acquiring knowledge, for example, and just kind of filling up your time with a lot of different things and listening to different people. This could be much more about, what is your guiding principle? What is your philosophy? And what kind of chatter or the influence from other people you need to release in order to get more in touch with yourself. And let me know how Saturn in Pisces since March 7th affected you in the comments below. If you are a Leo rising, Saturn is about to go retrograde in your 8th house of debts, taxes, karmic entanglements, and shared resources. And so will Neptune on June 30th. So double retrograde coming up in the house of working with other people and financial or other entanglements we have with other people. So this is interesting because in some regard, the Saturn being in your 8th house could be very much about either you're joining forces with somebody and starting some kind of long committed project, or you're working really hard on freeing yourself from projects and dependencies and debts. One of those two. And when Saturn retrogrades, you may experience delays. You may experience frustrations to your partnerships. You may experience a need to renegotiate, a need to rethink how you share with other people. Sometimes 8th house retrogrades bring up old fights about resources and about money. Even past kind of baggage and past vulnerabilities can come up because 8th house is the place of transformation. And with Saturn being direct here, it may feel like you're actually making efforts and you're transforming things. But when Saturn is retrograde, here you are looking back at the beginnings, perhaps at your parents' relationship or at your early conditioning and your, why are you in this debt in the first place? What kind of beliefs you need to rethink? What kind of mentality when it comes to money you need to examine? Like, where do you need to be more serious and honest with yourself and other people? Perhaps it means rethinking your resources and coming up with a strategy when it comes to paying off a debt. Perhaps it means having an honest conversation and negotiating the agreements you have with other people with honesty. But don't be afraid of hard work, and therapy can be very important right now. And if you are a Leo rising, let me know how Saturn entering your 8th house on March 7th affected you and whether you're feeling this energy in your life. If you are a Virgo rising, Saturn is about to go retrograde in your 7th house of one-on-one partnerships and business relationships, romantic relationships, marriage, or business relationships. And Saturn here definitely raised the volume on your relationships with other people. It could have brought a new relationship into your life. It could have brought perhaps more difficulty in the life of your partner and encouraged you to work harder on a relationship. Now that Saturn is stationing retrograde, some of that progress may backtrack, or you may experience more delays, frustrations, difficulties that you need to examine. And a lot of times, since this is an emotional sign, since this is like a spiritual sign, even the conflicts or disagreements you're having can be a lot more about emotions, right? This is how I feel. And getting real about your feelings, getting real about the foundations of those feelings, about your life and your family and your childhood and early kind of conditioning when it comes to romantic relationships is very important here, because Saturn retrograding in the 7th house will make you get honest. It will make you get realistic. And if a relationship is outdated, Saturn retrograding can definitely reveal issues that are perhaps lethal, or it will give you an opportunity to problem solve and improve the relationship. So could be very productive, but to me it feels like a period of inner work and growth and needing to examine the tendencies or even the fears you have in relationships. It could be a tendency to self-sacrifice. It could be a tendency to not speak up, and whichever it is, it will be best for you to get more honest. If you are a Libra rising, Saturn is about to go retrograde in your 6th house of health, daily work, and service. And Saturn has been in your 6th house since March 7th. Please let me know how it affected your everyday work and service and health. If you feel like you kind of became more serious about those topics, in the comments below. But Saturn being in the 6th house could have created more duties, more hard work, more projects, but it's been direct. So perhaps you've been feeling like there is some forward momentum. And now, ta-da, Saturn slows down and then retraces his steps. So some of the work that you've done will need to be re-examined, rethought, but mainly urging you to find a better balance. We'll never tire of saying that Libra in French is actually balance. I think the scales. Libra is all about balance. So somewhere you have potentially been pushing yourself too hard, and perhaps you need to reconsider. Perhaps you need to slow down. Saturn retrograding in the 6th house can reveal any difficulties, any issues, any imperfections in your health and things that you're not addressing, and perhaps encourage you to take better care of yourself, to maybe exercise, to rethink your diet, because you cannot just keep working, right? If you, with Saturn in the 6th house, it's like a very workaholic type position. So when Saturn retrogrades, it's best to slow down and do not fear the slowing things down, because sometimes in stillness we find answers and we end up calming ourselves down and feeling happier. And please share with me how this resonates in the comments below. If you are a Scorpio rising, Saturn is about to begin its retrograde in your 5th house. And so will Neptune on June 30th. So you have a double retrograde through your 5th house. And Saturn has entered your 5th on March 7th, and it's been moving direct. So perhaps you've been investing into some kind of creative project or some kind of baby. Could be a literal baby. Maybe you've been working on your child's education, or you've been really involved in childcare, or you have a passion project like a business that you've been putting a lot of effort in. And now, of course, Saturn comes in. Saturn is beginning its retrograde, and this could be the period of frustrations, delays, when things are moving slower, right? Where maybe you need to rethink some of the progress, some of the changes, some of the choices you made when it comes to a creative project. Maybe you suddenly start to feel a lack of inspiration, and you are called to look within and ask what motivated you in the first place. Sometimes looking back with Saturn retrograde and looking at your old ideas, looking at your old inspirations can be a great source of new ideas potentially. Do not neglect the past. Can also be the time when you are examining your relationship to children and examining certain fears connected to being a parent, potentially, if that is something that you've been dealing with. And romantic fears, sexual kind of fears, even sexual energy and desire can come up for review, because Saturn being in the 5th house can sometimes bring challenges to that area where you feel like your libido is low and you're not connecting with your partner as much. So maybe Saturn retrograding here can encourage you and your partner to tap into some kind of exciting sexual practice, tantric sex, for example, and try to do things differently. But also just find play and find joy in everyday life. And let me know how this resonates in the comments below. If you are a Sagittarius rising, Saturn is about to begin its retrograde in your 4th house of home and family, and Neptune will start retrograding there on June 30th. So double retrograde, double the fun. Saturn has entered your 4th house on March 7th, potentially making you focus on your home a lot more. Maybe there's been issues with the family. Maybe you've become more involved with them. Maybe you've been building or trying to sell or trying to buy a home. And now that Saturn is retrograding, the energy might slow down. The progress might slow down. You may find out that there is some kind of hidden skeleton, either literally where the house that you're working on has piping issue, or more figuratively where you discover a skeleton in your family closet. And Saturn retrograding, while that outward progress can slow down, while maybe you are rethinking the contractors you chose or needing to renegotiate, revisit, rebuild something, while the outer progress can be slow, externally you can actually be internally you can be working a lot on self-understanding, on like implementing better boundaries and perhaps being more honest with what you crave in life, and even rethinking what home is, where you are encountering these difficulties and these delays and perhaps some frustrations in your home can also get you closer to what you truly crave and what you truly desire. And let me know, how has your home, family, living situation changed? Or maybe how have you felt more pressures connected to these topics since Saturn entered Pisces on March 7th in the comments below. If you are a Capricorn rising, you are, of course, Saturn ruled. So your ruler is stationing retrograde, and that's always fun when your ruler is going direct. Retrograde. So Saturn will be retrograding through your third house starting June 17th until November 4th. And Neptune will also begin its retrograde there on June 30th. And Saturn being in your third house is always a pressure. It's always a sense of seriousness around your mental output. Whether that means you're learning new things at work, or you're writing, or you are coming up with new ideas, maybe dealing with technology a lot more. Just definitely your brain kind of spinning. Maybe you're feeling pressure to produce. And now when that Saturn stations retrograde and goes backwards, your urgency and that pressure can slow down a little bit. It may feel frustrating that you're not getting to where you're trying to go as quickly as you would like, but in reality, this is your opportunity to take it easy, to sort through the clutter and ask yourself which ones of the ideas you're pursuing are important, which ones of them are necessary, which ones are close to your heart versus just go, which Saturn in the third house can be. There might also be certain matters you have to clarify when it comes to communication, certain blockages, or certain kind of beliefs that you've inherited or carried close. Perhaps some of them no longer hold the same appeal. Because Pisces is a sign of kind of dreamy, emotional communication. So I think when Saturn is in your third house, your talk and your ideas and your feelings are coming from the heart. So the retrograde could be a true opportunity to ask what is coming from the heart and what is not, what you want to keep, what you want to release. And also pay attention to the matters connected to siblings or neighbors, because they can slow down around this time as well. And let me know how this resonates, and how has Saturn in Pisces since March 7th, how has it affected you? If you are an Aqua rising, another sign traditionally ruled by Saturn, this is significant for you because Saturn is retrograding. Saturn rules your chart, and Saturn is about to go retrograde in your second house of money and values. And so will Neptune starting June 30th. So you're in for like 5 months of retrograde action in your house of money and values. And if you've been kind of asking a lot of questions about your resources, or feeling like maybe your resources are lacking, this could be the time of inner realignment and inner rethinking, because Saturn being in your second house since March 7th, and let me know how has it affected you, could have created more pressures around money. Either because you are unemployed and you're looking for a job, or because you're not making that much yet, maybe you'd like to make more money, or because you are investing into something. Maybe you're literally just like saving up for a big purchase, right? And so when Saturn is retrograding, your progress can slow down. It may feel like the job search is taking longer, or you're unable to save because now suddenly you have this expense you need to address first. And as these things arise, as you're battling these frustrations, it is your opportunity to take it slower and to create a strategy for yourself, to ask which investments are good and worthy and which are not, to see if the progress is slow with the job you're pursuing. Perhaps it's not the job that is good for you. But getting kind of, it is your opportunity to examine your mentality. Do you have an abundance mentality, or do you have a lack mentality? I don't know if that's the official term, but getting a chance to kind of ask deeper questions could be significant here. And look at your spending habits. Look at your relationship to money. Look at the relationship your parents had to money. What kind of energy have you inherited? And let me know how has Saturn affected your financial house. Or even, like this is also the house of self-worth. So looking at how your relationship to valuing yourself impacts your finances would be a big, important topic here. And any comments, let me know down there. Finally, if you are a Pisces rising, Saturn is about to begin its retrograde in your first house of health, personality, physical body, personal projects, and so will Neptune. Neptune will be retrograding here starting June 30th. So having Saturn retrograde through your first house could be the time of getting more serious and more honest when it comes to your dreams and projects. If you've been feeling like you are kind of trying to get your life in order, trying to get things going, exploring certain directions, Saturn retrograding could be a bit of a standstill, at least initially. It could be your, it could be the time when the projects you're pursuing are not going as you would like them to go. Maybe you need to examine your health. Maybe you need to deal with some kind of bureaucracy if you're trying to move. There might be a very, very kind of serious time to get serious or time to get real about the things you're pursuing, and also about your own fears and about your limitations. If there is something you've been wanting to do, like if you wanted to write, but you're not doing it, what is stopping you? What needs to be released internally? What needs to be rewired internally? Maybe you need to come up with a schedule. Maybe you need to come up with a strategy. How can you improve yourself? Because Saturn in the first house since March 7th could have potentially created a sense of like, you see these real things you need to improve. Maybe it's a surgery you need to get. Maybe it's a baby you're giving birth to. Maybe it's your back that's been hurting you. And now with Saturn being retrograde, it's more about which internal issues you're not addressing, or which internal issues are blocking your progress. And also, where are you choosing to dedicate time to illusions? Where are you pursuing kind of unrealistic things, and where do you need to get more serious? As well as what kind of painful experiences do you need to process? So this is all I have. This could be an interesting transit. It's the first one we're getting, Saturn retrograding in Pisces, since late 90s. So it's as exciting to me as it is to you, because I do not remember early Saturn retrogrades in Pisces because I was really young at the time. So let me know how this video resonated, and have a happy, healthy Saturn retrograde in Pisces. I'll talk to you soon.